because 10 years from now, what'll make me happy isn't what it was before. So obviously for me, it's like what makes me happy now is more so a feeling, right? And I think a state of being. And sometimes it happens with the most random triggers, and sometimes it doesn't happen with the same triggers.
Papi and Friends podcast. Papi and Friends podcast.
Yeah.
Papi amigos y podcast.
Papi and Friends podcast.
It's Papi, baby. Yo, 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 yo. What is good, y'all? It's your boy, Papi, baby. And I am here back. Season 5. It has been...
Damn.
Right. Damn. It's been a minute.
Iconic.
And I am stoked to be back. And honestly, just I feel refreshed, rebooted, and blessed to have my first episode be with my boy Boogie. Thank you for joining me.
Man, thank you for having me, bro. I'm glad. I'm very happy to be part of the first episode of the new season. I know it's a big thing.
Bro.
You've been out the game for a minute. I've been pushing to get back, so I'm glad you're back, man.
Nah, bro. Glad. Like it's thank you, one, but honestly, being a guest on your podcast was inspiring for me to do it again. You know, like just being able to share conversation and like laugh and like, you know, just dive into topics. It just, it made me miss it. And I was like, yo, like, yes, it is time. It is time.
You had a great thing going, man. You had a great thing going and still going. You know what I mean? Because I listened to some of your pods too, and I was like, oh man, like good questions, interesting people. You know what I mean? Like the Papi and Friends show. I've been waiting, and then you put the trailer out, and I was like, oh, it's time. And then you kept us waiting, man. You was pushing us back like a Dre album release.
You feel me? I was taking notes. I was like, all right, let me be on let me be on my Drizzy vibe right now.
I feel it, man. I feel it.
But man, I guess let's just start with how we met, right? Like, I'll never forget.
Shout out to Wolf's Brew.
That part.
Wolf's Brew Coffee in Long Beach.
That part. And I feel like the thing that we both refer to when we first met is how I was like, yo, you're for sure do something creative, right?
Yeah. Because I had seen you. Yeah, we saw each other a couple times. They just said like, "What's up?" in passing and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, and then you asked me, you're like, "Hey, man, like we just talked about work or something like that." And I said I was like, "Oh, I was come back from work or something like that." And you're like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I was like, "It's some boring admin stuff." You're like, "Oh man, I thought you were doing something creative." I was like, "No, you got the wrong guy, fam. That's not me."
Right. But like, that's the funny thing, though, right? Is because then fast forward, you do creative work. You have a whole ass podcast
on the side, yeah, on the side.
So therefore, my creative senses were tingling correct.
Yeah, you're right. I just don't make money off of it. Not yet. But that's not the goal either. But yeah, I mean, you're the creative one. So I was just like, all right. I was like, that's dope. Like, and the stuff that you were talking about work and things of that nature, I was like, man, this is dope. I was like Wolf's Brew is like the hub for me.
Honestly,
personally.
No, same.
I don't get out like that. So when I do meet people that are cool, I'm like, all right, this is like that's something all you ended up knowing each other too. So that's what ended up being dope. So I was like, oh man, it's cool to be around like opposites attract, right? So my job is relatively boring. So to connect with people who have much more interesting jobs outside of my work, I think is like really, it's refreshing. It's cool.
Yeah.
I consider the coffee shop to be like kind of like not inner sanctum because it's public, but just like a me space. So it's like, oh, meet a whole bunch of people in my me space that are like just dope as shit and doing really cool stuff. So I think once we connected, it was pretty much over, man. Because I would see you like we linked. I think we saw each other a fair amount right before you ended up moving.
Right. 100%.
But excuse me, I think it was only probably a couple months, but even then, like, it wasn't planned or anything like that. I would just see you around the same time. I was like, all right, that's what's up, man. And then you're like, oh, I'm moving. I'm like, oh, damn, for real. It's like as soon as I start making friends out in Long Beach, you're out show.
Yo, no, that's so real. That's so real. And that it's funny too, because something you said, like opposites attract, right? And it's like, but like I feel like you as a person, as like a soul, are pure creative though.
Man, I
Like,
appreciate that.
like I feel like if we remove careers and jobs and shit, you know, and stuff, I'm gonna try to stop cursing on this episode.
Oh man, let me refrain to then, because that's half my vocabulary just got X'd out, fam.
I know. It just flows out. So okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, so if we remove all that stuff, you know, it's like your soul is a creative soul and like some real talk and like and I think it comes through heavy like in your fashion, you know,
Oh man, thank you.
like where does that are you know what? Even before that, let's just start with just like what is something that's inspired you? Because you are a creative, bro. So like what's something that's inspired you recently? Before we dive into your fashion game, because
any sort of inspiration, I think.
anything.
Again, opposites attract, so probably definitely my wife, I would say, because she's a designer by trade, and I think when you're in that type of, I think whether we like it or not, certain aspects of our career always kind of infiltrate our personal lives, and I think
Yeah.
seeing what she's able to create just on a daily basis, even if she thinks it's the most minute thing, I'm like, I could have fucking done that on my best day. I couldn't have done that on fucking 800 milligrams of Adderall. Sorry for cussing.
No, it's a safe space.
You know what I mean? So for
Space.
me, I'm like being constantly just being around creatives, right? I think in general made me creative because there are a couple things that I did beforehand that I don't get out much just by proxy of being a dad and tired. And you know what I mean? Like I actually like my kids for the most part.
That part.
Like and love my like and love my wife. So it's like kicking it at home for me. I'm like, man, that's dope. Like, kicking the mineral water, watch some basketball, hang out with the wife.
Yep.
Once the kids are asleep and stuff like that. So I don't get out much. So I think it's hard for me to gain inspiration, or been a little more difficult to gain inspiration just by not being out.
Right.
Everything I do is kind of like I'm big on. I think I'm just big on schedules and stuff like that. But to be able to work from home at least part of the time, and see my wife create, I'm like, damn, this is dope as fuck. Because like she made a whole career out of it. And she's like, you're creative too, and she kept pushing me to do that. So I think inspiration definitely from my wife. I am a visual person, but like I just suck at most mediums of art. Like I can't draw for shit.
Yeah.
Like my daughter Kennedy's killing me with stick figures. You know what I mean? So, but still being in that environment, I think, of seeing creative people work, or even being just in the circle, helps a lot. So I think again, most of my inspiration from my wife, and then also just creative people that I'm around, just talking about stuff. You know?
No, that's tight.
That I would say that I'm not into art like that. I remember you and Drew were kicking game to me with all of Virgil's stuff, and I was like, I had no idea. But like, obviously, I know Virgil, but like all this other stuff, I was like, oh man. So you know what I mean? Like just hearing stuff like that from you and Drew and the other folks that I'm around helps immensely with finding inspiration for anything, right? Whether it's just, we can say podcast and you can say show, but it's more than that, right? I think it's a link into our lives, our fashions, what bugs us, what doesn't bug us, all sorts of stuff. I think it's just it's hard to. I like that you made it show, just because it encompasses so much more than just audio visual aspect to it. But I digress. Anyway, the people around me and my wife is where I draw inspiration from, man.
That's tight, bro. I think that's beautiful, and I think a lot of people listening can take note from that, because a lot of people, I feel, find themselves in a position where they have no inspiration, and it's like you are literally a living example of inspiration lives around you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all comes into like how you look at it, because you could look at everything that is around you as just, oh, that's my wife, that's her job, that's the homies, they like that shit, you know?
Yeah.
But instead, like that's so dope that you're able to like look at each of these different things and like pull inspiration and appreciate it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
And
think it's
then
just because I'm not connected to it on a daily basis. I'm only
right.
connected through my family and my loved ones.
Yeah.
So it's hard, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's
Like you're not forced to have to like search it out on a
yeah,
daily basis. 100%.
yeah. And I don't, and then that's the thing too. I think it's similar to writer's block when people are stuck like that. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily look for inspiration. Sometimes being a visual person, just watching TV, I was like, I like the way that this shot was recreated, or I
Mm-hmm.
like the way that this picture looks, or whatever. And I'm like, well, how can I finesse it to make it work
Mm.
for me and for the podcast or whatever? Or even just like, man, like I wonder if we're gonna incorporate that into an outfit or whatever. I think once you start getting too in the weeds, I think you don't you can't zoom out. And I think zooming out helps a lot with me
Yeah.
personally. I think zooming out helps a lot with just perspective and also being able to find inspiration. Because I'm like, dude, you could just pick up like an Apple pen and then
Yeah.
just look at the design and
Right.
just read into it and be like, oh, this is cool. Like, what about this do I like? What about this is cool? What about this is not cool? How
Mm-hmm.
can I expand on it or whatever? Or even just looking at it, like a sneaker or a hat
Yeah.
or anything. I just feel like you can find bits of knowledge from everything, inspiration from everything. If
Nah,
you
it's so
don't, then
real.
I think you might just be going too hard on yourself. You know what I mean?
Nah, it's so real. And I think everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, when they look or think of inspiration, they think of like a feeling, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm inspired, you know?
Yeah. Like the aha moment.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, I think what you're laying into right here is the fact that you create those aha moments by just
Yeah.
appreciating life around you. And
Yeah.
that's so sick, bro. And I think
That's an
like,
age thing too, I think, man. Thank you. I think that
mm,
it's definitely an age thing because when you get
were you not always like that?
no, I think my demeanor has been relatively the same for a good portion of my adult life. Obviously, I think age and wisdom has kind of calmed me down from just doing the wild stuff that I used to do when I was a kid. But I think maybe a little grumpier, more chill, but I think my demeanor, my mindset is relatively the same. And I think that um, being mindful helps a
Mm,
lot. And I think that's like one of the concepts of Buddhism in general is just like, hey, be mindful of what's around you and stuff like that. And
mm.
um, being able to enjoy that and then understanding, I'm 42, so I'm probably at the midpoint of my life right now, give or take. I
Bruh,
mean,
stop, dog.
you never
Not
know, right?
even.
So
Not even.
if you start thinking about it, like, oh man, like I spoke to some friends recently. I was like, maybe I have more behind me than in front of me, right?
Mm,
So if that's
mm,
the case, then where do I go from here? How can I appreciate it? Because the days are long, the years are short. The
mm.
older you get, the less time you have. Period.
Nah, it's
You
so
know what I mean?
real. Nah, yeah, that's it's so real. I think I want to kind of pivot into talking about what does happiness mean to you then? Because I feel like that mindset, there's I forgot where they were, but there's a group of monks that I believe as they walk throughout, they remind themselves like one day you will die.
Yeah.
Like they like repeat that to themselves. And it's just like, how do you like what does happiness mean to you in the time period we have left on this planet? You know what I'm saying? Like, cause like you're right, like we only have so much time left and we never really know when the end is. And so it's
Right.
like, what does happiness look like to you and what does that mean to you in this time you have
Mm.
left, you know? Because I feel like that's something that I'm constantly not struggling with but in search of is how do I be happy? Like how do I enjoy
Yeah.
what I have? Because I come from this grind, build, create. And
Yeah.
like I've been heavy on my meditation and like prayer these days. And like I've been finding that for me, it's just like that question of what is happiness? You
Yeah.
know?
I
And
think
interesting.
it's a good question, and it's not something I don't measure it. in my personal life, and I don't think it's something that's like very clearly attainable, because 10 years from now, what'll make me happy isn't what it was before. So obviously for me, it's like what makes me happy now is more so a feeling, right? And I think a state of being. And sometimes it happens with the most random triggers, and sometimes it doesn't happen with the same triggers. So I would say that stillness, and like a reduction of the noise in my head. That probably makes me sound like mentally disturbed person, but
bro, no, not even.
I think I had a lot of anxiety, and it kind of all built up during the pandemic. And then when I started speaking to somebody about it, like seeking professional help and a therapist, we kind of honed in on what made me happy. And I think stillness is just like, you can't help just being in a big city, just being bombarded. Even if you isolate yourself, you're just being bombarded at all times by something on your phone, on your computer. The minute you walk outside, even if there's nobody outside, you still hear noise. Right? Noise that's not from nature. You know what I mean? So all that kind of sticks in my head, and it feels to me like white noise, but like really loud white noise with just these little random sounds that kind of in and out. And that's kind of just for the most part, it's in my head all the time. But when I find these little kernels of stillness, and I guess I would define it by being in the moment, or a different version of being in the zone. That's where I find my happiness, right? So it could just be something where I'm hanging out with the kids at a place that we always go to, but they just look at me a certain way, and then everything else just kind of melts away, and then it's very still in that moment. I can be mindful of what's going on, or with my wife, just not doing anything, you know what I mean? Just hanging out, and then I'll get fleeting moments of that, or I used to get fleeting moments of it. They last longer now, now that I've spoken to somebody about it. But I would say the reduction of noise and just being able to be still, like spiritually and mentally, I think is what brings me the greatest amount of happiness now.
Wow. One, thank you for sharing. But two,
no worries, man.
Like, yes, everything. It's interesting. Everything you're saying is really kind of what I've been breaking through and like observing with like my meditation practice recently, is very much that. I'll be super anxious, right? And then I have to do some breath work, and then I like tell myself, yo, all this that I'm like thinking, because for me, I find less noise from the outside world, but I feel all this noise is coming from like my inner self. Like my inner self will not shut the fuck up.
What does your inner self tell you?
Oh, it's just always like do more, like keep going, like create more, like you should be further, you should be doing this, you should be doing this by now. And like, oh bro, like really? Like, bro, like, hey, but think about this, think about that, think about this, think about that. And it's just nonstop. But then what I've been doing is like for example, today I had my son's football practice, and I was all like riled up, just like trying to get things together, and just like thinking about work and thinking about like this exhibition I'm coming up in, and this coffee stuff and this and that. And then I was like, none of this matters right now. None of these things are gonna get solved right now.
That's noise, man.
And like I just like, it was crazy. Like I felt like my muscles, my back relaxed, and I felt like everything like came to the center and like was like locked up. And I was just there, just present, and just like we put music on the car ride. We was vibing. Like it was just like, it was happiness. Like I was just like,
you were able to enjoy it without the little thing in the back of your head saying,
right,
you still got to do this.
Right.
It robs you. It robs you of time, man. And time's the only thing we can't buy back, right? So
that part.
That's dope though, man. Like meditation is hard. People are like, you just sit there and be still. I'm like, no, it's tough.
Okay, have you read Bruce Lee's book by his daughter called Be Like Water?
Shannon Lee though?
Gas.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a whole like thing about how he would meditate, and his whole like depiction of meditation and understanding of meditation is like treat them like clouds. Like people like what you just said. People are always like, you have to sit there and be like, oh, it's quiet.
Think of nothing. You're like, no, you can't do that.
Right.
Not here, not in LA.
Right. And so
LA area.
And so like his understanding of it is, one, meditation, you treat them like clouds. All your thoughts, they're just clouds, and you just observe them. You just look at them, but you don't try to solve. You don't try to figure it out. You absolve that. You observe them and let them go. Just let the thoughts. And like I've been doing that, and it's crazy for me doing that. I'll come out of like my meditation, and like an hour or two later, I have an answer to one of those clouds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's
big,
like,
man.
Yeah. And so it's just crazy. Because it's just like I was in that same boat of like, okay, like to meditate, I gotta sit here and not think about anything and just be quiet and breathe.
Yeah. You're already defeating the purpose, right? Like just like you're not supposed to think. That's
right. Don't think, but think. But wait, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Should I not think about not thinking?
Yeah. I hear that all the time, and I just know that that's just not the case, and it means a little different. It means something different to everybody. But that's dope that observe your thoughts. It's like you can, I think, zooming out in a sense, like, oh man. And then when you think about it later, you're like, yeah, none of this shit matters right now because my son's out here doing something that he loves, like true freedom, right? In that moment. True freedom, which is really cool to see because we don't get that too much as adults. So that's dope. I'm looking at that book, though.
Yeah, no, please. Please look into it. But no, I think something you just said right now too is like, as adults, we are so conditioned.
Institutionalized.
We're so jaded. And I think since becoming a father, more recently, I think just with like on the search for happiness and like what life is like I guess like I'm on this search of my ikigai, my purpose, like my dharma in this stage of life right now. And it's like in that I've realized that it's more about thinking like a kid and creating like an adult. Do you know what I'm saying?
That. Yeah,
you know
I like that.
Like,
because kid logic, people rag on their kids. Their kids so fucking stupid. I was like, dude, kid logic makes perfect sense.
You feel me? If we want to change the world, if we want to save the world, ask kids. Like,
dude, do you follow Recess Therapy on Instagram?
Nah, should I?
Yeah, dude, it's a guy who goes around Central Park, I think, in New York. He goes around the US, but he's mostly in New York, and he just asks kids questions.
That's
like,
sick.
hey, what do you enjoy the most right now? And some kids just like, oh, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You're like, oh, that's stupid because it's basic. But then you see the kid talk about all the nuances that go into making the sandwich, or my mother made this for me, knowing it's my favorite thing and it's blah, 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 or whatever. And you're like, damn, like that does make sense. Like the way we think about stuff is kind of like the English language. That shit don't make no sense, bro. GH, PH, and F all make the same sound. Like you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But then to you, like, it makes sense. You try to explain to your kid, you're like, yeah, this shit don't make sense. And the kid's asking you all the right questions. So I like that, where it's like you approach things with like a kid's curiosity.
Yeah.
Because kids are one of the things that help me deal or be more patient. It's like, hey, kids are scientists, they're engineers, they're trying to figure things out that you already know, and stuff that doesn't make any sense that took you years to master.
That's so real.
They're just starting out.
Yeah.
Right. So they're asking all these questions that you think are stupid, but at the same token, you're like, hey, that was you once. Rewind it and kind of figure out where to go from there. So I like that though, man.
Yeah, no.
Work like I like
you know what I'm saying? It's just like, I don't know, there's like that freedom that comes when you like stop trying to be perfect. Stop trying to be like what you think it's supposed to be. Even like this podcast, right? I stopped doing it because I was too busy trying to figure out what it's supposed to be, what it's, you know what I'm saying? Like how it's supposed to show up, how people are supposed to, engage with it. But none of that matters. What matters is just doing it and having good conversation and
just like taking the first step, man. Because I mean,
that part. I'm riding a bike.
It's a creative process, man. I think that there's so many things in my head, not being as experienced, I think, creatively in terms of making stuff. as you are, and like a lot of my other friends are, and my wife as well. It just I'm not as experienced. So for me, if I have a vision in my head and it doesn't translate, even if I spend time and money on it, I don't want to put it out, right? Because I'm just like, man,
Interesting.
this is trash. I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is
Yeah.
trash.
Yeah.
Everyone else was like, man, this is dope. I was like, nah, they're lying to me. They're just being supportive friends or whatever. But it's like, just put it out. You know what I mean? Don't worry about the perfection. The perfection comes with repetition,
That
right?
part. That
So
part.
just put it back out. And that's been the number one thing. I was like, man, even if I don't feel like doing it, as parents, life be life. And so sometimes we got to take a hiatus from whatever we're doing, but
Yeah.
just stay in tune with that part of, at least me, tap into that side, either through conversations with you
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whoever. It'd be like, and just, try to remain consistent. So
Yeah.
that's
No,
my thing.
I'm super curious. What was there a specific moment that helped you overcome that fear of putting stuff out? Or are you still in it, Or like
I would say advice from one of my boys who's existed
mm,
in the internet space for quite some time.
yeah.
He's excuse me, he's behind the scenes, but not my boy John Gotti. Um, he started a blog years ago that started off as an email list, and I would keep running ideas by him, and then he's just like, where are these ideas, man? Like, what happened to them? And I was like,
Mm,
man, I shelved them because this, that, or whatever. And
yeah.
he's like, dude, just put it out. He's like, you're never gonna like it, but you keep putting it out, and then figure out what you can do better and who you can connect with to make
Mm,
it better. Because don't
mm,
always think it's gonna be a one man show. Like you're gonna need help, whether you pay for it or not. You're
yeah.
gonna need the help. So he's like, figure that part out, and you'll be fine. So I think the consistency, him saying that, and then obviously my wife chiming in saying, "Man, just put this shit out. Like you sitting on it, just put it out." I think it's been an exercise to just don't overthink it. Just do,
Yep.
right? Just do. Just in that regard, just do and go with the flow. Because by nature, I'm a overthinker, overanalyzer, and sometimes that kind of holds me back. And I imagine some other creatives back because they're just like, it has to be perfect. It has to
Yeah.
be perfect. But it's like, what is perfect? Will you even know it if it comes? Like, what if it's
Right.
perfect to somebody else?
Right.
Right? And
That's so real.
I'm not giving that to that person. So not to
That's
be
so
like
real.
arrogant about it, but I'm like, what if
That's not
somebody else
arrogant at
might
all.
what if
That's
somebody
just
else
being
relies
real.
on it? Yeah, what if somebody else relies on it or would find a value in it, even if I didn't, even if it was like a quote unquote throwaway.
Right.
So I was like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna just start putting stuff out. If people don't react, they don't react, and I'll take every bit of
Mm,
information I can and feedback from folks and kind of keep it pushing from there.
mm. And I mean, just keep in mind, Rick Rubin doesn't know how to play instruments, yet he's Rick
That's
Rubin. Right?
wild.
So, like,
That's so
you're kind
wild.
of like Rick Rubin energy, bro. So,
Thank you. I'll take that compliment. I'll take that compliment because Rick Rubin is a god to a lot of people.
right, right. But I
He's
think that's interesting, though, right? It's like somebody on that scale doesn't know, quote unquote. I don't know the full details, right? But I mean,
right.
that's what the social world has been saying that he doesn't know how to play instruments. But it's like, it's just really honestly just knowing what's good and what's not,
Yeah.
and being fearless. Everything you're just saying right now,
Yeah.
and
Tapping in.
right, right, just knowing, just feeling it, going with the flow, understanding, and just being like, here you go, world.
And he's kept that for so long. And we
Right,
celebrate that dude, but at the same time, he's hit some duds. And that's okay to say. You know what I
everybody
mean?
does.
Ain't nobody
Like
sweet, ain't nobody betting 1,000 in this life. It doesn't matter
just
how I don't care how good
Jesus,
you
just
are.
Jesus.
You know what I mean? So
So
that's
real,
dope.
so
Yeah,
real.
no, that makes sense. Thank you for that compliment, man.
Nah, it's real, bro. And I think I think it goes back to just like the very beginning of this whole entire episode. You are creative. like,
Yeah, I'm getting
like,
there. Yeah, I'm getting there.
but I guess you know what? Let's dive into like what does that even mean to call somebody creative in today's society? I feel like what does that mean? What does that mean?
I think to me, I think it means somebody who thinks. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but thinks outside of the box that's
Mm,
been created for them by society, right? Specifically, people of color.
mm,
Um, as you know, are the boxes that we're given are much smaller.
right.
Um, and more, I would say more structured. Not that structure is a bad thing, but I think that the expectations are there, especially if you're first generation kids of immigrants and stuff like that. I think there's always that familial obligation as well. But I think people who kind of kick that and they're like, nah, I want to do my own thing. And even if that own thing is like, I want to put my twist on something that's like already been done, that's creative, right? So not necessarily doing something new, but doing something outside of what society would portray that person as. I would say, to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I feel that. I mean, so like,
go ahead.
I'm just curious then, like, why do you feel that you're not creative at moments? Because I feel like everything you just said is what you do.
Like, I mean, outside of work, right? I think so.
But I guess that's the thing too. It's like, what role does our job have when we describe who we are? You know what I'm saying?
Like mine is literally just like, oh, it's just a check, right? I think
but society makes us feel like our job is us.
Is our identity. Yeah. That's how they get you. That's how they get you to kill yourself for these hours.
Right.
And feed into the capitalist machine or whatever, I mean, my thing growing up, and I think my generation is probably one of the first generations that would say, yeah, I actually want to enjoy what I do. And then I think the generations after that are like, oh yeah. Because I want to say there's 2 generations after me, maybe. I'm considered an elder millennial, so there's Generation Z and Generation Alpha, I think now.
Yeah, Gen Alpha is like my babies. Like, wait, yeah, I think so. I think it's we're on a fucking laptop. Let's Google this.
Google University.
Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha, what? From 2010 to 2024?
2010. Wow. So there could be 13-year-olds.
That's wild.
So they're already future world leaders, man. See?
What's that? What's Gen Beta?
So is that 2026, 2025 and onward then?
I guess. Yeah. 2025 to 2039. That's wild.
Man. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I think I just think that my generation was the first to maybe understand, hey, you can do something that you love, but that wasn't my reality as a kid. And it kind of still isn't. I've just been kind of indoctrinated in a way and conditioned, like you were speaking on earlier, from my parents, from other people, like, oh, well, we came to this country so you can have a better life for yourself. And better life for yourself means, since we're already middle class coming to America, you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. And I think my parents kind of figured out, my mom primarily kind of figured out, like, maybe he's not cut out for that, so do something else, just work like an admin job or something that can't be outsourced. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just do that, and when it comes to the admin function. But it was never, it's kind of like marriage though, if you think about it. In some immigrant cultures, it's just like, oh, you grow to love it,
right?
You're not supposed to love it first. It's just a responsibility or an agreement.
I
work, you pay me. What I do outside of work, none of your business.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. None of your business. So keep it pushing. So I think I think that would be it for me, man. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it besides that.
I feel like that describes it. Would you ever leave and go do full-time creative work?
No. And I've been asked this question before.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I have so little passions, I would say. Beyond family and friends and stuff like that. I think my passions are primarily just like getting fly, kind of talking about stuff. Yeah, I'll be saying I'm gonna be, I'm a
toot that horn.
For better or for worse, I'm a capitalist. We grew up in the the Gatorade Michael Jordan era, where it's like, oh, I'm trying to be
like Mike.
Yeah, I'm trying to jump higher and run faster. Do whatever. So I think, but beyond that, I'm like, if that's pretty much all I love, and I enjoy playing video games on occasion, stuff like that, and coffee, right? If I try to monetize that, my fear is that if I were to try to monetize and I got jaded, like we just spoke about too,
right?
I would lose the love for it. And then I have even less passions in life. Right. Not trying to have like a million, but
right.
I have like 4 or 5 passions. And if one of those got taken away from me because I try to make money off of it, I'd be devastated. Because to me, it's like, it's just icing on the cake. You know what I mean? Like pie in the sky type of, the pie in the sky mentality is like, oh, like, yeah, just break even. You know what I mean? Get some ad dollars and break even on the pot or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should think to do more. I was like, but that's the fear in it too. Like I lose the passion and the drive and the willingness to do it, and it becomes a grind. I'm like, I don't want that for my actions. So I think that's right now it's a no, you know. If it blows up buck wild, maybe not, you know, but right now it's a no.
That's dope, bro. The fact that you're able to know yourself so well and to be so like I feel like the word that comes to mind is like so happy with your life. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's so beautiful. And I feel so many people and listeners struggle with that, which is why in today's society, everybody's like, yo, monetize this, yo, do more. And that goes back to like my inner voices that are always yelling at me, do more, be more.
Yeah.
Make it more, you know?
Yeah. But the thing is, like, you know, I hear it as a parent all the time. Would you, your inner voice, would you use that for your kids? Hell no. Nah.
That's deep.
So don't use it for yourself. You know what I mean?
And that was a bar, bro, though. It's like,
I mean, see that a lot, though, man. You know what I mean? It's just, because I'm really hard on myself just doing basic stuff.
Yeah.
I see people and I get kind of envious in a way because I see people that are just like, they bump into something and they're like, oh, and they just keep walking. But if I bump into something that I know is there, I get mad at myself. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
I was like, if I just keep saying that to my kids or my loved ones or something like that, I was like, that's messed up, dude. Like that's not a cool thing to do to your loved ones. So don't do it to yourself because you gotta take care of yourself first, you know? So I think that's the whole thing for me. Like, hey, if you want to say this to other people, like that you know and love, don't say it to yourself and be gentle, you know? Like it's okay. I don't know if you're a completionist, but I am.
Now, what does that mean? A completionist? I haven't heard this term.
It's like if you start something, like you can't rest until you finish it.
Oh, okay, so it's what it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like hybrid or something.
This like means something completely different. No, I mean, like anything for me, I'll get upset about, or either I'll get mad about it because it's taking too long for me, or I just put it off because I don't think I could finish all of it. Prime example being like laundry. I'm just like, dude, once I start, I'm not going to stop. But I was like, hey, you can do like a quarter of it and still enjoy the rest of your night, and it'll be there tomorrow. It's fine. Or you can make just enough, fold just enough to make sure you got some clean draws for the morning or something. That's fine. But I'm such a completionist that my mind is telling me, my body is telling me like, hey man, stop fucking around. Finish it. Do it.
So how do you battle that?
Kind of compartmentalize, I would say compartmentalize and just understand what's the most important thing for me to do right now.
So
get done tonight.
So this goes back to you and your understanding and learning of being present being the most important thing, and like stillness almost.
I mean, therapy again has helped a lot with that, and it's just a lot of it is like just self-reflection, but not being too hard on yourself. It's just like, oh, this is, you know, being gentle and be like, man, I didn't do this because I thought I didn't have enough time, but I still could have done half of it and then save the half for another time, and I would have been a better use of my time rather than fretting over it or having it beat me in the back of my head when I'm laying down at night. You know, which it increases anxiety at that point. So for me, it's been what needs to be done right now. And what needs to be done right now for me, as opposed to what needs to be done right now in terms of what society is telling you. And it can be as small, to me, it can be as small as, again, laundry, right? Because I saw, man, sometimes I get sucked into parent TikTok, and like parent TikTok is both dope but also super toxic.
Yo,
you know,
it's so real.
But there was a bar from this woman who was just like, she's like, my job as a parent is not to make sure every single piece of laundry gets done, but to make sure my kid has clean clothes for the next day. Does my kid have clean clothes for the next day? Yes. Then it's the rest of it will happen when it happens.
Message.
Right? Don't just wait there till the last minute and like, stress the fuck out and be like, oh my God, I need to do this. And then, everyone suffers because you're not in a good headspace, right? It's like, does this person have enough to cobble together an outfit for the next day that's not going to get him ragged on, right? That's not going to get him roasted. You know what I mean? If it's that, then cool. That's enough. And then just understanding like I can do enough and be okay. Right. I can do enough and be okay. But I think that's been
a
centerpiece for me.
I feel that's a huge thing that I personally experience in fatherhood. And I see my wife experience in motherhood. I guess it's just parenthood in general is exactly that of society always making us feel like we're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Or like we're not being kind enough, or we're not disciplining right, or we're not feeding them the right food, or we're not, or basically just like everybody telling us that we're gonna that we're fucking up our kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? Maybe we are like a little bit.
Yeah.
But like
are you trying though? You know what I mean? Are you trying to do the right thing? Are you trying to do right by your family? Then that counts for something. Right.
And what's interesting is when because I started having kids out of college. And so it was like I was just barely becoming an adult myself, trying to figure out this shit. And I feel like only until I got older did I realize that I was giving like all this positive and good energy to people out in the world and coming home zapped, because back then I was freelancing, right? So I had to like just be out there networking. Hi, yes, let's do it. Let's shoot, let's create.
Yeah.
And then I'd come home, excuse me, and just be like grumpy with the only people that deserve my good energy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's
that's rough, man.
Right.
I'm glad you noticed it though. You know what I mean? Early on, at least.
Bro, like I never felt so bad when that was one of those hard ones you had to realize was like, yo, I'm a dick. Like,
but that's true. And it takes a lot for you to realize that too, because I think I hear a lot of excuses from parents too, and maybe not necessarily excuses, but reasoning. We're like, I'm trying. I'm like, well, maybe you're trying too hard and you're putting too much effort on it, too much effort into it, and you're mad because it's not turning out the way you want to. And that's okay, but just take a step back, man.
Right. And then it goes back because then I went deeper into analyzing why I'm doing this, right? And side note, I'm very analytical about why I do the things I do, because I don't know, I have this thing of just I just want to genuinely be a good person, So it's I'm always okay, why did I do this? Right. Going back to the story is after deeper analyzing and figuring that out, I realized that I'm frustrated when my child isn't happy, because I'm like, well, I'm out here doing all this work to make you happy. And I come home and you're not happy. And then, and then it's they don't understand that. Kids don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to hang out with their dad,
That's facts.
And that has helped me tremendously. And I think accepting that work, they'll cut me in a second.
Yeah.
I don't know, just the fact that if I die tomorrow, there will be a job listing for my role before my wife even is able to buy the coffin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not gonna care. They're not gonna think about it. But you know who will? You know who I meant the world to? The people in this house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Kids, the wife, yeah.
And so that's facts. Talking to you is just so realigning and just reassuring that I'm doing the right thing, because just your mindset in regards to family and work and passions and creativity and all that, bro, it's just it's just really inspiring and very empowering.
Compartmentalize in a good way, right? Because I think that you do so much dope shit. And I could feel the pride, that you take in creating a good product.
Yeah, and
that's not something that should be taken lightly. But at the same time, having enough energy when you're at home to do these things, because I'm like, dude, whatever it is you're getting paid, you're getting underpaid. Whatever it is I do, I'm getting paid for is getting underpaid. They're paying me market value, but the market's fixed. Right. And to your point, I'm like, and I think we talked about this maybe on a different episode of the pod, where I was like, you got to look out for yourself, because charity starts at home, and that's real. It's not being selfish or anything like that, but you teach the new generation how to not be like you and how to not be so cruel to yourself and to push yourself so hard. Now, self-motivating is great, but what good is it if you're like, if in your pursuit of perfection, you take it out on your kids, your wife? Yeah, that shit ain't cool. You know what I mean? And like you said, they don't care. Right. They don't care. If I were to drop dead tomorrow, God forbid. Right. Same thing. Like you said, they'd have a job listing out and it'd be filled. Or I give 30 years of my life to one company. You know what they're going to do for me? They're going to give me a plaque and a fucking store-bought cake. Right? And then after that, shit, they'll have the replacement for Boogie. And they'll forget all about me. Right? No matter how much money I save them, no matter how much money I make them, right? That's the reality for the most part. That's not everyone's reality, but I think for me, they might love you, but they'll cast you aside. They don't love you like the people at home love you, right? So then giving work what you think work deserves, the energy that work deserves, if you're real with yourself about it, and saving the rest for your wife and kids and your loved ones, that's a big part of things too. But it also, because we've been conditioned, it's your inner voice saying, man, you could have done more. You could work some overtime on this project. Right. This little thing right here was a little bit off, you know what I mean? But I was like, man, fucking people don't care. People don't care like that. So I think that's good it's really good that you're starting to do the work, right? Because the old GI Joe cartoon was like, knowing's half the battle. Is like, right? And you want to be a good person, and that's already a great start. And obviously, you're a great dad, great husband. Thank you. And everything in between, man. Like, your energy was cool, and it was like, I don't fuck with a whole lot of people. Like, I'm an extrovert, but I don't fuck with a whole lot of new people, because like, I got my friends, I got my family. Right. But then, like, anytime I linked up with you at the shop, even if chopped it up for 5 minutes, it was always like, it's always great. Like, I would leave and like, it's like a breath, like a breath of fresh air. Like, oh man, but then that you realize how important that is. You're like, I gotta save that for the right people. So you're getting there, man. I applaud you for that, for sure, man. Man, I appreciate you so much for that, bro. And I think like, I just think that that's something that's been interesting and kind of been popping up in my conversations recently. It's just like the thought that not everybody deserves your energy, Yeah, I'm a people pleaser too, so my wife gave me the come to Jesus talk years ago, and was just like, hey man, they might love you, but make sure they love you and they don't love what you do for them. Ooh. So one more time. That was gas, like, make sure that they love you, but not make sure that they actually love you, not that they love what you do for them. All my people pleasers listening right now, that was for you. Listen to that, because that's so real. It's so real. Yeah. And it's so easy to get caught up in like that little dopamine hit you get from people. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Man. Yeah. Right. Yo, that's so amazing. You're so gassed. You're so sick. Yeah. But it's like, it's validating in the moment, but what are you really getting out of it? Right. For yourself long term. Right. Like, what, like, that's what it's like. I don't care but like, I don't know. Like, I think like going back to like finding that like freedom as like a kid point we were talking about earlier, I've reached this point where it's like, I don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks about me anymore. Yeah. All I care about is how like my wife and my 3 kids like think of me. Yeah. Self-actualization. Yeah.
And
you gotta see them every day. You gotta see them and deal with them every day, whether you like it or not. So it's like, well, yeah, their opinion matters. Shit, you know?
Yeah,
like live with them.
It's liberating in a way. It's like, wow.
It's very freeing once this circle gets smaller off the strength of you just understanding what your worth is, what you can put out, and what you're not willing to put up with anymore either. You know?
That part. Message. But bro.
What's good?
I wish to continue talking. We're gonna have to do a part 2 on this one. For sure, a part 2 on this one.
No, we're gonna do it in person, because I was telling the homies earlier, I was like, man, I got my yoga mat ready. I'm a roll through. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We'll link up in the garage, unroll it, just sit crisscross applesauce and chop it up some more.
Ooh, vibes. I'm fucking with that. But before we wrap up, I want to just ask you one. Well, I guess there's 2 questions left. One, if you could inspire one listener right this moment that's listening with a gem, whether it's something that you learned recently or something that you've embraced for the past years, what would you share with that one listener right now to inspire them?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Gems from the Equinox, Words of Mayhem, Loren. It's like the name of one of his albums, but I'm like, I'm not sure I have a lot of gems, but I would say know the difference between because of or in spite of, right? When you're defining yourself as a person. So you can say, well, I am successful because I came from a broken home, as opposed to I am a successful person in spite of being from a broken home, or whatever it is, right? A lot of folks use because of to try to turn the situation around, turn the negative into a positive. Right. And that's not always the most healthy thing for you. Because I think that that it's also, it's be happy you have a job on some toxic positivity type shit. But I'm like, no, man, it's okay to be damaged. I think we're all a little damaged in a way. But you really got to understand what your motivations are, and know that you persevered and why you persevered. Was it because of or in spite of, right? And see what really formed you as a person, as opposed to, this is messed up and it happened, but I still am who I am in spite of it, right? Right. So, and that's the thing to pass on to our kids too. Yeah. Because I think it all goes back to the negative self-talk too, right? Yeah. He's like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'm successful. I'm a good dad because I'm hard on myself. Yeah, but too hard on yourself, probably, right? I think we can both admit that for ourselves, that we're a little hard on ourselves, too hard on ourselves sometimes. But you can say, but if you phrase the words, I am a good dad, not because of my negative self-talk, but in spite of. And it's like, oh, well, this is something that I should modify. Right. So it doesn't, because kids are smart and they'll know. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's real. They'll know when you're bullshitting. So don't do that.
They do know.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what the bullshit is, but they feel it. They're like, this doesn't feel real.
Yeah. Kids are intuitive, man. And like kids are smart. You know? So that I would say those 2 things. Like that thing, in spite of or because of, know the difference and within yourself and move forward with that.
That's deep. I love that.
Hopefully somebody out there listens to it. If not, that's cool too.
Somebody will hear that and it will help them. That's like, that's like, these last 2 things are something new that I'm adding to this show. And it's just like, it goes back to me, like, just saying, I just want to do this and have fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it's like, I feel like I just love having something like that to wrap up an amazing conversation like that, So thank you.
Always good times. Always good times, man. I appreciate you.
And then
it's
lastly,
really an honor, man.
Yo, but wait, it's not done yet. This part's like my inner child wilding out right here. So, since a kid, I've always loved the outros on mixtapes. Shout out Big Homie. Shout out this. Shout out Teacher on Third Block. Shout out.
Remember talking your shit.
Yes, this is your moment to shout out anybody to talk your shit real quick as we wrap up this amazing episode of
Bro, I'm gonna
Papi
shout
and
out you
Friends?
first. I'm gonna shout out you first for putting this all together. You know what I mean? Like we don't link as often as we'd like to. Admittedly, there's the distance, but
Yeah,
it's always a good time every time we link. So I appreciate
blessings.
you having me on for the first episode. I mean, shout out to my family for sure. It's it's played out, but I'm like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? My wife, my wisdom. Shout out to the 5%ers who created that term. I was like, no, she's my wisdom for sure. Beautiful kids, Kennedy, Malcolm. Shout out to Wolf's Brew, because without Wolf's Brew, this probably would have never happened. Shout out to the other homies that I met through you, David, Eric, all them. Shout out to my co-host Drew from Retro Radio. Yeah, I'll plug my shit. I'm a double dip in
As you should. Shout out Retro Radio.
Everybody look for Retro Radio, the podcast. You can go on, it's wherever you find your podcast, just look up Retro Radio. There's a couple other podcasts that have that name, so just look up Retro Radio, Retro Boogie, and I think
this will be in the bio. This will be in the bio too somewhere. I'll put it in the bio somewhere on this podcast.
Put in there. You could find us there. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now, but we'll be back at it now too. We'll be back at it. But thank you, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Man, blessings, bro. Appreciate you so much, man. This was amazing.
And the future ones will be amazing too, man. I'm sure of it.
That part.